Good morning, Dan and Amy. Amy, we've talked so much about Republicans, including, the Romney family and the Bush family that are not supporting Trump or not campaigning for him.
Didn't go to the convention.
There are Democrats that none too thrilled about one Hillary Clinton as well, less reported upon because that's the disposition of the D.C. press corps. But when Congressman Brad Ashford sees Hillary Clinton coming, he's going the other way. He's the one Democrat member of the Nebraska Congressional Caucus, and Brad Ashford will not be campaigning with one Hillary Clinton.
I'm not going to campaign with her. I'm going to that's not my role at all. I don't believe my responsibility is to work directly with my constituents.
So, there's a lot of angst on the other side with Hillary, too, particularly as we find more and more information out about the folding in of the State Department to the Clinton Foundation, or if you prefer, the Clinton Foundation to the State Department being interchangeable parts. And today we also mourn the likely end of the marriage of Huma Abedin.
Yeah, but you know what I learned from
Carlos Danger.
Andrea Mitchell yesterday? This may come as a surprise to you, but Huma and Anthony Weiner have been separated for a while. Now she just made it public. They've been living separate lives for a while, particularly because she's on the campaign trail and away from Anthony Weiner and their 5-year-old son for long stretches of time.
Well, hopefully they can continue to communicate through Twitter. For more serious matters, we're now happy to be joined by our friend. He is Colonel Ralph Peters, Fox News strategic analyst. Colonel Peters, thanks again for joining us. Appreciate it.
Always great speaking with both of you.
And so I want to start with the occasion of the 10,000th Syrian refugee coming to America this week. And I wonder what kind of insight you have in terms of the threat assessment of 10,000 people that Jim Comey, the FBI director, says we cannot vet now in this country.
Well, of course, it's a problem when you've got people coming in that you can't vet. But at the same time, it's too easy to lose perspective. The Syrian refugees that we're letting in, they go through some vetting. There may be terrorists among them. But we should be concentrating much more fiercely and uncompromisingly on the problems that are already here, which are the hate mosques, the mullahs who are funded in madrasas, the religious schools funded by Saudi Arabia and the Gulf Arabs. We should be concentrating on the the uncontrolled use of the internet by terrorists and their sympathizers. And we should be concentrating even harder than we are on homegrown threats. Because if you look at the terrorists who have struck America since 9/11, disproportionately, they're either Muslims that were born here, or young discontented males who converted. So while we must be concerned about immigration, we must know who is here and what they are doing here. If you really run the numbers, the Americans killing Americans, or the American residents killing Americans, aren't recent refugees.
Well, how can we monitor mosques without stomping on their right for religious freedom?
Well, it's actually very simple. Hate speech is hate speech. We would not allow the Ku Klux Klan to go to downtown Chicago and hold a rally that called for the murder of Jews and blacks and Hispanics. And that would be incitement to violence. And when mosques do the same thing, it is not religious freedom. It is insulting. It is incitement to violence, and it's subversion. But there's a more fundamental approach that we need to take, and that is Congress needs to act to bring forth legislation that demands reciprocity in the funding of religious institutions by foreign actors, whether they be governments, organizations, or individuals. In other words, no religious institution on U.S. soil can accept funds directly or indirectly from any foreign entity unless that foreign entity is or is resident in a country that practices full religious freedom. In other words, the Saudis don't get to fund hate mosques here until we get to fund chapels and synagogues in Saudi Arabia. Now, that's not going to happen. But why on earth, in the name of a perverted idea of religious freedom, should we allow Islamist fanatics and states such as those in the Persian Gulf and Saudi Arabia whose goals are inimical to our interests, who, in the case of Saudi Arabia, lies at the root of all Sunni terrorism we've seen through their Wahhabi proselytizing, why should they have a free hand to fund hate speech in the United States of America? It makes no sense, and the Saudis have gotten away with it only because they spread so much money around Washington. They ingratiated themselves for decades with American corporations and with American political leaders of both parties. And we are crazy. Well, I am for religious freedom, absolutely. But it stops when religious freedom turns into an incitement to slaughter Christians, Jews, Hindus, and others. So we need to apply common sense as a nation, and Congress needs to do its duty and get serious about this. And there would be no problem that I see, no moral, ethical, or ultimately legal problem with legislation that simply says, you don't let us fund religious institutions in your country, you can't fund them here. Makes sense to me.
Well, that's interesting. But, I mean, essentially the distinction you're drawing is the difference between a house of worship and a criminal conspiracy. And that's a distinction that is provided for in U.S. law right now. We just have to interdict the criminal conspiracies.
Yeah, the political correctness, that greatest of all poisons in the American political system, has prevented us from doing so many things. I mean, political correctness, I mean, you look at the Copernic case and all that nonsense, and political correctness will not allow us to discuss pathologies in minority communities that Daniel Patrick Moynihan raised 50 years ago. A hero of mine, by the way, a brilliant man, much missed still. And we cannot discuss religion honestly. I mean, when you have a president that won't call Islamist terror because he doesn't want to offend terrorists, I mean, something is fundamentally wrong. And so democracy relies on a few fundamental principles that we are losing. One is that democracy is about compromise, this idea that you don't compromise. That's anti-democratic, that's fascist or communist. Democracy is about horse trading. But the other thing that bothers me is democracy is about free speech, not hate speech, not incitement to violence or subversion, but an open and honest public debate, reliant on facts and statistics and informed views about our problems. And we cannot have that because there are protected groups in our society. As soon as you try to have a frank discussion of issue X, you're a racist. If you try to discuss Islam honestly, you're a bigot. And so what happens is the shrillest voices, the most dangerous voices on both political extremes, drown everybody out who's trying to have a conversation. So, again, there's a reason why the First Amendment is the First Amendment. And we've got to get beyond political correctness because it's not the police that are killing young black males. It's political correctness that's killing young black males. It's not. God knows it's not religious tolerance in its purest, noblest form that's enabling terrorists. It's political correctness. So again, I see this as the fundamental disease, political disease of our time, and we, without wantonly and gratuitously insulting or attacking others, we need to have an honest discussion in this country.
Well,
black theories, wild conspiracy theories on all sides.
And it's worth noting that what separates us from Islamic theocracies and other authoritarian and totalitarian regimes is religious pluralism, religious freedom, and free and fair elections. And if those two cornerstones of our free society are compromised, then the whole thing comes tumbling down.
That's absolutely right. And although those of us who are religious believers certainly believe in our particular brand of faith above others, nonetheless, as a student of history, what strikes me is a competition. Just as it's good in the marketplace, it's good for religions. And societies and civilizations get into trouble when one religion has a total monopoly or a near monopoly and can dictate terms to every individual, to all other groups. And so one of the many reasons for the wonderful success, the currently underappreciated success of the United States of America is even in religion we have competition. Competition in the marketplace brings us better products at cheaper prices. Competition in religious affairs between denominations of faith, where in this country we can leave one denomination, go to another without getting our head chopped off. That's a very, very healthy thing. And so I just feel like, my gosh, especially in this with the heightened rhetoric of this political season, one thing I see my fellow Americans doing is failing to appreciate the magnificence and the wonder of this country. For all its undeniable problems, there's no place better. And if a quarterback from the 49ers thinks there is, he should seek it out.
All right. He is Colonel Ralph Peters, Fox News strategic analyst. Colonel Peters, always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.